Hello and welcome to the JCN Clinic podcast show. I'm Jessica and we have a Q&A show for you today. We haven't done one of these in a while, so Chris and I are a bit pumped. Pumped up. So we asked you on socials to hit us with your questions and we've got a good roundup here. We're going to cover three. Threes always seems to be a nice, tidy number. And the good thing is that these three are similar sort of vein, so they sort of tie in nicely. So I think we're just going to jump straight in, guys.
Jump straight in.
So would you like me to ask you, Miss Carissa, the first one? And yes, we didn't even decide this. Okay. So Helen Vivian asked, is it important to have carbohydrates with each meal? If so, what are some healthy, I think she meant to say carbs and it cut her off, healthy carbohydrates?
Cool. Okay. Well, I'm going to say with each main meal, not 100% necessary. However, I say that with a little bit of caution around it because I do feel like carbohydrates, and I'm just complex. I'm going to say complex carbohydrates are very important. And the reason that they are important is because A, energy, but also B, fiber. Actually, I've got a few reasons they're important. Energy, fiber. They also will help sustain your glycemic response and your insulin response to food when coupled with protein. So do you need to have them at every meal? Probably not. But what I would suggest is that you are most certainly having them with your first two main meals of the day. Dinner can be a little bit more loosey-goosey depending on what you're doing and your training and things like that. But you really, I feel like need some level of complex carbohydrate with breakfast and lunch, coupled with adequate protein to regulate your cortisol and insulin response throughout the day. I find that if you miss the mark with carbohydrates, especially with breakfast and lunch, that within an hour or two of eating those meals, you're quite hungry again. So you might feel okay for a little while, but you're quite hungry within, maybe 2 hours of eating and you get a bit of a blood sugar drop. You're going to be craving carbohydrate, which most commonly seems to be sugar is the go-to instead. So if you actually make the commitment to make sure you are including some form of complex carbohydrate, and we'll talk about what that can look like, complex carbohydrate with breakfast and lunch, that from a blood sugar and insulin point of view, you'll function a lot better throughout the day. And then this flows on to how your stress response is handled and also how your energy plays out as well. So what a complex carbohydrate can look like varies from person to person. And I think this is, down to a personal preference, but also your energy and caloric demands. So what type and how much will vary from person to person. But for example, breakfast, a good complex carbohydrate can be something, and this one I'm going to put a little bit of a caution over because I don't want you to fall into the trap that this is just enough for some people, because it's not. But some of my clients do okay just on a banana as a starchy complex carb. A full banana in a smoothie or on a piece of toast or something like that with some extra protein on the side does seem to be enough for some people. And I just said toast there as well, so they've had a little bit more. But what I commonly find is that people do need more of a complex carbohydrate with breakfast. So if you're someone who's having a smoothie, what a complex carbohydrate could look like in that is some banana, but also some whole grain oats, a piece of beautiful whole grain toast, or something if you're in the gluten-free space, something that's whole grain but gluten-free. Are good ones. Gluten-free pasta or whole grain pasta is a really good complex carb, and brown rice is a beautiful complex carbohydrate. Legumes are, but probably not a lot of people eating them for breakfast. But definitely, like if we're starting to look at what I would rate as complex carbs, they're probably my top hit list, and sweet potato we could pop in there as well. Sorry, I need to cough.
Sweet potato pie smoothie.
Sweet potato pie smoothie.
Yeah, no, that's a good summary. But yeah, complex, I think when Helen's asking what are some healthy carbs, like you just covered that well, like definitely just delineating between complex carbs and carbohydrates as a category. But yeah, overall, like whole grains, more starchy root
Fiber.
vegetables, like those legumes, those fibers, and then banana, depending, give or take, as a fruit might work for some people, but this is where the individualized approach is so important. And of course, like different, like toast or breads or products that are made and baked with those whole grain fiber based flours, all kind of fall under that as well. I often think about with this too, when you're saying, with this question around should we have it with every meal, I couldn't agree more with everything that you said, particularly the way people tend to structure their day and their energy requirements and where people tend to train. And I don't know if I've said this before, but it reminds me of when I was learning to drive, and having driving lessons, random, I know, and my trainer, what would we call him?
Driving
I don't know.
instructor.
Instructor. That's probably more realistic. Yeah. He was like very specific about everything, as they should be. And then we finished a session one day and he jumped in the driver's seat and drove back to my house. And when we were driving back, the way he went around a corner, he kind of drove a little bit over the line. And I remember saying to him, "Oh, but you can't do that." And he's like, "Jessica, I know what you can't do." He's like, "But you need to learn what to do properly and then you can break the rules." And I was like, that's fair enough. And I've always thought that in the context. It's weird that I remember that, but
So
even
true,
with
though.
it's like, if you understand why complex carbs are important, how to incorporate them with your meals, and the importance of macronutrient balanced eating, which we'll link in the show notes, that is fantastic. But then it's like, how do you break the rules occasionally for you, or what does that look like for you? And we've even done episodes too where Krista and I have broken down our diets a little bit, and like the way I probably eat my carbohydrates, well, it definitely is different with what I have compared to Carissa, which is a really good example. But it's a good question, and hopefully that answers.
It's a great question.
Everything.
I love that analogy. My driving instructor, my driving instructor was loose. He had AC/DC cranked or Pink Floyd and would make me constantly pull over so he could get out and have a cigarette.
What? That's so random.
He was a dude. Total dude. Like, this is like
so
25
funny.
years ago. So I don't think you don't think you'd get away with that now. But he was a bit of a rule breaker as well. He didn't give me that analogy, but he was very much the same. Learn how to drive properly, and his advice, actually, which is probably not as nutrition related, but his advice to me, which I thought was great, was treat everyone else on the road like they're a fucking idiot.
Maybe you apply that one to social media for people who are giving up unqualified advice about nutrition.
He's like, the best advice I can give you is that. He's like, and then you'll always keep your diligence to treat everyone else on the road like they're a fucking idiot.
I love it.
Anyway.
All right. So second question is from Quotes from the Sun. What does a day on your plate look like for your training, and do you track macros? With little heart emojis. Oh, that's
cool. Nice. We could do both of our days, but I'll do mine.
Yeah.
So a day on the plate for me with training, I train in the morning, and I am quite a fueler compared to a lot of people. I think we've talked about this before. I need a lot of food. I'm very top heavy with my eating around my training, because I find if I'm not, I really just fuck out in the rest of the day. Like, I'm tired, energy, I struggle, I get blood sugar cravings. So for me, fueling around training is super important. So a day on the plate for me on a training day looks like I get up, I have some sort of carbohydrate. So it's usually just a banana, because that's easy. I have a coffee, because I'm a coffee head, and if anyone wants to say you shouldn't have coffee on an empty stomach, I just had a fucking banana, so shush. I have my coffee. Then I train. While I'm training, I have I don't do BCAAs. I have a hydrolyte, and I have some of the ATP juicy collagen in my water bottle, because it tastes like cordial and I really like it. So I have that while I'm training. Then when I finish, I come home and I have a smoothie. So when we're talking about tracking macros, I don't track them specifically, because I feel like I know macros, and I know what I'm getting from a protein and carb point of view. But just to kind of probably layer it out from a tracking point of view, because I have tracked in the past. So then the smoothie that I have has got at least 30 grams of protein in it. So a good protein powder, mine's got about 28 grams. And then I will add, maybe some peanut butter or tahini or some seeds or whatever. So there's always a little bit more protein in it. And then that's usually got maybe another half a banana and some berries or just berries or something like that. Then I need more food within probably an hour of that smoothie. So the smoothie for me is literally just a top up post training, protein top up post training, and then I'll have an actual breakfast. So that usually, again, that's where I bring in my more complex carbs. So that will be either some cooked brown rice or some whole grain toast, and I'll have some protein on top of that. So for me, that's usually fish or eggs with avocado or, whatever, all the things. So that's my morning. So my morning usually, I would say, has somewhere probably between 40 to 50 grams of protein done by 10 o'clock. And definitely some complex starchy carbs in there coming from grains and bananas. That's the morning. I rarely train in the afternoons. I'm not an afternoon trainer. I will maybe go for a walk, but I'm morning. And then lunch is just a balanced macro meal. I do not, again, miss the carbohydrates at all. So we actually just were talking about carbs before. For me, especially on my gym training days, and now that I'm back into that, I'm just so focused with this again. But yeah, really good amount of protein, fiber, salads, and some complex starchy carbs. Afternoon snack for me, yes, but it's usually just like a little ATP protein bar or a protein muesli bar and like a hot drink of some kind. And then dinner is usually some sort of protein and veggies, whether that's a curry, whether that's like, chicken, fish, tofu, veggies. I don't always have carbs at dinner because I feel like I'm so top heavy with my food. So my dinner for me, it can sometimes be definitely a lighter meal. I'm not someone who needs to be loaded with food to go to bed or sleep well. I don't need complex carbs for cortisol and melatonin and sleep and stuff. That's just not my style. I don't need it, so I don't need to focus on it. But dinner is definitely a little bit lighter. So it's just usually more like a beautiful salad with some protein or, something like that. So that's my day on a plate. And if I was tracking, 100%, and when I have tracked, I probably sit around 120 grams of protein. And I think my carbs are up around 180 a day, somewhere between 130 and 180, I think, from memory, grams a day. I think that's me on a plate in a day training.
I was thinking too, yours is a really good example, like of how you eat in the day, like as far as still getting enough carbohydrates and fiber, like the way you've just explained, that's really helpful. Like in context of the first question, as far as having complex carbs in meals, like there's so much of loading the morning and the way you use carbohydrates throughout the morning, those meals at fuel training, pre, post, lunch, that if you don't have like complex carbs with dinner, you're already in a good space versus
100%.
Someone who hasn't had enough. Like we'll see that where it's like, well, this is why you need to load your day at least more.
And fiber and carbs. I know we talk so much about protein, and we're going to talk about protein with the next question. There's so much focus on protein on social media at the moment. It's like every fucking macro gets its limelight. It's protein at the moment, which is great, and I'm so happy for that.
Yeah.
But it's like carbohydrates and fiber are what keep you full.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like everyone think, and it is accurate in saying protein equals satiety. It does, and it helps regulate your blood sugar. But in the absence of fiber and carbohydrates, protein's not going to hold you. So it is about those three components with your meals and really getting them into your digestive system at the right times in the right quantities. That really makes the difference.
For sure. Okay, so mine, I'm just trying to think because it can vary. I don't think it varies too much. It depends on the training. Yeah.
I just thought we should talk about the differences of our training because you're running at the moment, which I would kill to be doing.
True.
So Jess is doing long distance running at the moment, and I'm not doing any running or walking because of my leg injury. I'm strength training at the gym, and I can do cardio on a bike. So I think it's probably different too, just to mention the differences in our training at the moment because you're doing some pretty hard yakka stuff, which I'm so loving watching. But
yeah, and I think that's where this question's a little bit nuance, like because I still train in the gym pretty solidly. It's probably tiered back maybe one day as far as like a intensity day, but I'm oscillating between that and running and building running. So the running is more based on endurance and working towards trail running events. So it does vary, but typically my training, I try to do like Carissa in the morning. I like to train in the morning. It sets me up well for the day. So I love it. This was for people to listen to because I'm different to how I load my day to Carissa. So if I'm going to the gym, or if I'm going for a run in the morning that's not a long run, so anything that's under an hour, I literally just have my pimped up matcha. That's it. Like, I don't feel like I need anything else. I've experimented with having and without, and it doesn't make a difference for me. Personally, as an individual, I feel better with my pimped up matcha. As far as how that works for me through it. Now, if you guys don't know what the hell I'm talking about,
Everyone, what the fuck is a pimped up matcha?
It's not just a green tea. Like, my pimped up matcha has a full scoop of collagen in it. It's made on homemade almond milk. It's got cacao butter in it. So it's actually more of a protein, tiny bit of carbs, but it's more protein with a bit of fat. And it's not for any reason. It's just that I freaking love it. I'm like Carissa with her coffee. Like, it's my thing. It's my jam. Don't touch my freaking pimped up matcha. So I have that. Or if I'm doing anything longer than an hour, then I will eat before I go. So this morning's a good example. I had a piece of gluten-free toast. We're down here. We have the GF precinct, which I love. So I had a piece of their toast. I'll put a bit of homemade fig jam on it. Or this morning I was out of it, so I just had some of the vegan dairy butter on it, which is quite delightful. So I will have something like that, or I might have a banana like Carissa if I'm going for something longer. When I'm out training, if I'm at the gym, nothing, just water. If I'm running, I will take with me water and electrolytes, which I won't get into too much because that's a whole different thing as far as the breakdown of all of that. If I'm going on a long run, I will take food with me. So I'll take electrolytes. I love the long dried bananas that look like a turd. They're probably one of my favorites. I'll take rice, crackers. I'm experimenting with foods that I can handle and digest. I really want to try and get food in more than gels if I can. Like, I'm really kind of keen to see what I can do with food, but it's an experiment on its own. So then, and to be honest, those longer runs, they're usually on the weekend, which means I will have breakfast beforehand. So the breakfast I'm about to go into, I'll usually actually have this prior to a long run, because these trail runs I can be gone for like 3 hours plus. So I'm not going to do that on a banana. So I'll do my training. I'll come back. My breakfast is either my protein porridge, which is on the website. So it's a big bowl. It's actually more than what's on the website as far as the amounts. I use more of the volume of everything, but it's a combo of quinoa flakes and banana and protein powder and salt and cinnamon, all cooked up with fruit and yogurt and there's so much honey that goes into it. Like, it's ridiculous. So
I either talk about how good honey is, by the way.
I
love honey.
So I'll either have that. So that's protein, carbs, lots of carbs in the variety of the grains and the fruits, some fats on there with the peanut butter. So it's either that or a pancake, which is kind of same but different. It's same, but you cook it into a pancake, right? Or occasionally eggs on toast. But like Carissa, it's like protein, carbs, fats. I don't do a smoothie and then another one. I do it all as one, but often it's so big that I'll eat 3/4 of it and then I'll come back an hour later and eat the rest of it, because it's just huge. And I do this at the clinic when I'm up there. I'll like bring in a container with the rest of my breakfast. So I kind of do what Carissa does, but it's the same meal. And then honestly, lunch is very similar to Carissa. The types of foods we have would be maybe different, but I'm carbs, protein, fats, veggies, salad for lunch. It'll be all variations of whether that's leftovers or something I throw together, but I'm very similar to what Carissa does. I would never not have lunch or breakfast without carbohydrates, particularly with the training that I'm doing. I don't have a morning tea most days because of the way I do my breakfast. Afternoons, I'll often have a hot chocolate, even in this crazy weather. And I'll put collagen into that. And I'll often use like half a dairy-free milk and half water and all of the things that go in. But I usually prefer something like that than it's rarer that I'll eat something unless I'm really hungry, and then I might have like a protein bar or a muffin or something I've made. And then dinner, that's where I'm different in that I always have carbs with dinner. And my dinner is probably, I want to say it's a good size meal. I was going to say it's the biggest meal, like in some ways it is, but we will always have carbs, proteins, veggies, fats. Like it's a pretty good size meal. And this is where it's interesting, right? Because that meal, well, that's not true. Sometimes I feel over full because I can be a pig like the rest of us at points.
Me too.
But usually I feel really good from that. And I know that's part of why I train in the morning with my matcha. Like, because I have that. And then after that, I'll also have a dandelion tea and some dark chocolate most nights. Or sometimes if I'm really hungry, I'll actually have some yogurt and fruit. Like I'll have another meal to follow. So I can have a lot on that tail end of the day, which in turn I think is a part of the morning. But if I did wake up in the morning and I was like, needed something, I'm not going to ignore that. So it's interesting how it's different. And I think the only variation in that would be if I've had a long run day. Sometimes I'll definitely do that breakfast, but I might be running over lunch. So then I would come home, and that's sort of like a continual top up of different snacks. And there's more of a concentration on carbs and certain types of like food, like maybe even sort of simpler sugars, but still natural sugars that I'll have first, which will then lead into dinner. So that day can look slightly different. But yeah, so I guess lastly, the tracking, like Carissa, on and off I've tracked. I don't track at the moment. Sometimes I'll just do a random day here or there to see where I'm at, but I know what I need to be hitting with my, I think similar to Carissa, like 100 minimum, but 120. I try to get higher with my protein if I can. It's not always that simple, but my carbohydrates are really pushing up there now. And I would say my overall calories, if I'm going to track at the moment, my calories are important more to make sure I'm getting enough. So I'm really pushing into like higher calorie brackets, but I'm trying to do that with whole foods. Like I don't want to be just like, oh, I need more calories, I'm just going to eat a Mars bar. Not that I'd ever eat a Mars bar.
Yeah, you would.
Because I would shit myself.
I was going to say, because it would literally make you shit yourself.
So the tracking thing with macros, yes, I think it's a really good tool, particularly if you are training. It's good to know what your protein and carbs in particular look like. And then also fats within that as a female, like if you're getting enough as far as what your cycle's doing and your overall calorie intake. I feel like it's more important to make sure you're getting enough, because most women in particular, when they're training, actually underconsume. And it's one of my favorite sort of spaces I love working with clients with is making sure that looks where it should and helping people get it to where it needs to be. And it's not easy. Like if you need to eat more, it can be hard, like to get enough in the day. And I mean, that's something even with the running, this sort of endurance versus gym, like, there's a podcast that's just dropped that with Mel and I talking a bit about that. Running's not the best for your metabolism. Like it tends to, particularly the more you run with endurance, it actually tends to dampen your metabolism, and it can actually really quash your hunger. So, you could be out in the mountains for 3 hours and you come home and the last thing you actually want to do is eat, and it can take you quite a few hours before you actually feel hungry. So I was going
to say, I've had that with clients that are hardcore cyclists as well. I think 100 k's or something, or even more on a Sunday or something. And it's just like, just trying to get them to fuel properly for that is hard, because that endurance cardio is so different to heavy lifting.
Still getting enough in, like actually going like your mind and your appetite's telling you one thing, but it's like, no, I need to still get this in. Like it's overriding that, which I find fascinating. So interesting, right? Like it's a good example of just those variations. So lastly, Our third question, here we go. So Tanya, and now I'm sorry, Tanya, if I'm going to get your last name wrong. I feel like I should know it by now. Tanya and it's either Poljic or Pollack if the J is silent. I'm so sorry.
Pollack,
You reckon Pollack?
I don't know. I'd like to think that, but I'm wrong with how I pronounce everything. So,
so Tanya asked, why is protein important and how much do we really need?
I feel like this is just the hot topic question at the moment.
It is, isn't it? Yeah.
So protein, like obviously, I think we did a whole podcast on this in terms of amino acids and all of that. So I'm not going to rehash all the science behind it because protein is essential for building healthy cells, building healthy hormones, building healthy neurotransmitters. Like it is our amino acids, essential and non-essential, are just super important. So protein is a non-negotiable. How you get it can vary, but how much you require, I think, is probably what people are lacking the understanding in and around. So gone are the days where, when Jess and I did our degrees, Nutrition Australia or World Health Organization, whatever it was, the recommendations for protein was 0.8 grams per kilogram of body weight. What we, and obviously we knew that you needed more, but like I think what we're starting to understand now, and obviously just even with our own journeys of training and all of that over the last, 6, 7, 8, 9 years, we've realized and learned too with ourselves and our clients, like how much more is actually needed. I think back in the day, like we'd be like, oh, if you're getting 80 grams of protein a day, that's adequate. But I think no less than 100 grams for females is ideal. Like some of my clients struggle to get up around 80 or 90, but 100 grams, I feel like, gives you about 30 grams with each main meal and then a little bit in a snack or, maybe a bigger meal somewhere like that. But I feel like if most women are aiming for 100 grams of protein a day benchmark, then you're doing pretty good there. And then we obviously can add more in depending on the type of training that you're doing. The updated and revised guidelines now, I think, are 1.2? I might get this wrong, so please don't quote me on this, everyone. 1.2 per kilogram of body weight as maintenance. And I think then it goes up. So if you're someone who's heavily training, you can be up in the 1.8 per kilogram, 2.2 per kilogram of body weight, which obviously, like if I use myself as an example, like I'm 65 kilos, if I'm just doing fuck all, and I need 1.2 per kilogram of body weight, I can't do the math, but let's just say that puts me up around the 80 grams or something like that. That's not enough. Do you know what I mean? So I think, we've got to take into fact that most people are walking around, they're doing some walking and some strength training. Most of us need to be up around that sort of 1.8 grams per kilogram of body weight, which puts most people 100% over the 100 gram mark. Now, what I've talked to my clients about is in context, what does this look like? Because you're not just going to have 100 grams of chicken and think that you're going to get 100 grams of protein. And I think this is where a lot of the confusion around protein comes as well. Within everything that you consume, there is a level of protein. So if you're having a 40-gram scoop of protein powder, that doesn't mean you're getting 40 grams of protein. That means you're getting somewhere, depending on the protein powder type, between 22 and probably 30 grams of protein. If you're having 100 grams of chicken in a meal, you're only really getting 32 grams of actual protein. If you're having 2 eggs with breakfast, and they're large eggs, you're probably getting about 15 grams of actual protein. So what we are talking about when we're saying how much protein someone needs, and we're just giving you the guidelines of let's aim for 100 grams plus of actual protein, and that's what is required for that blood sugar and stabilization that we were talking about earlier. But also too, just to maintain a healthy biological function, right? Like it's hormones, neurotransmitters, cell repair, like all of these things. Protein is just so important.
No, that's so well explained. And yeah, as you just said, it's like a building block of every cell within our body. Like protein is crucial for survival. Like it's.
Go and say it, Jess. If you don't,
I'm not gonna say it. Anyone near the podcast is like, what are you talking about? No, I'm not gonna say it. But it is crucial for our survival. And I think there's a lot of emphasis on protein, obviously, with training, which is great. But for the average female, absolutely, you need to think about all of the things that Carissa said, as far as like your neurotransmitter function, your hormones, even down to your gut. Like there's so much importance on getting enough protein. And it's interesting with like the RDAs and like there's a lot of talk about that now. Like I think what I look at with it too is, you know, it's almost like based on a bare minimum, like they're being revised, which is good, but it's almost like this is the bare minimum of what you need to like be healthy in inverted commas versus
basically,
right, individualizing it further and looking at like, what about if we want to feel better than our bare minimum, like what do we need? And like it's so varied in what a person does with their day and how that protein requirement can change. One of the things I like to do to make it slightly easier for people is just for kind of working it out. And I love that you just explained about like, because I think that can be really tricky where people are like, oh, I just had 150 gram piece of chicken. I'm great as far as like the actual protein in the food, but is to tell people to just convert their weight in kilograms to pounds, like know what that is, and then just aim for that amount in grams. So basically,
now.
Chris says, let's do you. So you're 65. Oh, hang on. I'm not on the right page to be doing that. Chris is just working it out. But I know if I do that and convert myself over, I'm definitely, I can remember right, it's at least giving me about 120 to 130 grams instantly of protein that I need. So if you aim for that, this is a very common one in the States they'll use. I'll just say pound for pound. And it's really simple to like get that in your head if you just do that one conversion.
I'm 143 pounds.
Now, the thing is why they also will say that is that it's really uncommon that people will hit that. So if you aim, if you're like my pound for pound is about 140, that's sort of where my ideal or like, great space to be in. Most people aren't going to hit it, but if I'm hitting closer to that end, great. So I think that particularly if you're a woman, I would probably stress with this calculation, if you're a female who does train, and there are a lot of you listening that do, we know it's like, really, really common now. That's where I like that as an option to consider, because it tends to push women a little bit to that, kind of, it's a little bit higher, but it's a good one to aim for. But yeah, it's I really, again, love that you highlighted about how the variations will come through with the different food, and also for people to consider the classic, vegetarian or vegan diet, and like how much harder that can be to really be looking at how much you need to be eating of those plant-based sources to get enough actual protein, which can be tricky if you're someone that does do a lot of training too. But yeah, I feel like you've answered that question really well. I don't really have much more to add to it.
No, I feel like, I'm glad you touched on the plant-based space, because I was thinking that after I said it, like, you can do it if you're exclusively plant-based. It's just going to take a bit more work than, someone who's not exclusively plant-based. Still doable. But yeah, definitely. I get a lot of my clients who are plant-based to rely more on their protein powders. So we definitely can at least, and probably 2 serves a day, and then the rest coming in from legumes and tofu and tempeh and things like that. So, but yeah, doable, but just...
I like the way you say legume. I say legumes. You say legumes. It sounds so much more fancy.
I probably don't say it like that all the time, though. I probably say legumes sometimes and legumes other times.
Legumes.
Legumes. It's the one thing I haven't made bogan. It's amazing.
Well, they were a good little roundup of questions. Again, very interrelated. So I think that will be quite helpful for everyone, as far as learning a little bit. And Carissa and I got to share a little bit about us, which is, it's always fun. So before we finish up, let's give you guys a couple of recommendations, because it's been a while since we've done this. And did you want to go first with the one you were talking about before? No, it's just like shaking her head. She's like, nah.
Not really. You go first. I'll see if I can think of something better than what I was saying before.
I was actually thinking about the podcast that just dropped. Well, today, what is the date today? Today, I think, is the 8th, so Friday the 8th. So it's dropped today. And the reason I'm thinking about it is because it's very in line with this particular podcast. So Mel and I, so Mel is one of the other practitioners at JCN Clinic, just did one on how nutritionists fuel their training. So we both shared our own training and exercise history, like a little bit more of a deep dive into what we both do independently, how we use fuel, nutrition fuel around that, and also a lot about what we've learned. So we talk about mistakes we've made, things we're still trying to refine, and just share the variations, which is interesting because Mel does a lot of like powerlifting and Olympic lifting. And obviously I've just talked a bit about what I do, but yeah, we do go into it in a lot more detail. So if you liked hearing about that and you want to know more, go and have a listen to that episode, and I'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah, cool. I'll actually really enjoy listening to that one because I love watching Mel's lifting as well.
It's great, isn't it?
So good. She's so strong. I've got a couple of friends that friends that lift should be a hashtag. But yeah, and I love watching them. Like it's something. So it's not something like I love strength training myself, but I don't like lifting's not something I am interested in. But I do love watching women do it. I couldn't give a fuck about men doing it.
Yeah. There's nothing cooler than seeing like females do Ollie lifting or like do like really heavy deadlifts and squats.
Yeah, I just watch it. Another friend of mine, Penny, she does it, and watching Mel whenever they pop their YouTube story, I'm like, fuck yeah, go girls. Yeah. My recommendation is not going to be what I said before. I'm actually just going to say that my recommendation, and I'm just getting into the space, but is that I bought a portable ice bath. So So I think we'll unpack this on a podcast in another day, but I'm doing it purely for some injury and some other stuff recovery, which we'll talk about one day. But to see if it has an overall effect on some health parameters that I'm trying to work on for myself. But I went down. I've never been opposed to ice baths. I love the idea of it, but it's just not something like I fucking hate the cold, like hate it. Like to the point where I think I said in my latest Instagram post, like Queensland winters are too cold for me. So this is a challenge for me. I do cold showers and I have done that on and off over the years. So it's not something the cold water immersion therapy is not something I'm opposed to, but I did go down a bit of a rabbit hole, reading some stuff, looking at stuff on YouTube, listening to Andrew Huberman and all of that. And I'm pretty convinced that some of the stuff that they're looking into it, I'm loving the idea of. So I am doing it. It wasn't expensive, but I totally underestimated the amount of fucking ice I'm going to need to keep this fucker cold so I can get into it. I got it down to 12. I've got it down to 12 degrees so far, which what they're saying at the moment, is that it just needs to be a temperature that's uncomfortable, and that's what they were talking about, like on the Andrew Huberman podcast.
Like 25
20 degrees is uncomfortable. Yeah. 24 degrees. The aircon when I come home is uncomfortable. Does that
the JCN Clinic aircon.
Yeah, exactly.
So you're in an ice bath now. Like, let's face it.
I'm basically cold immersion therapying every time I come into the office. It's the same when I get home though, because Mick's a cold junkie. So if I get home and he's been at home all day, it's like fucking 18 degrees when you walk into the house. I get so mad. I'm like, turn this fucking shit off. It's Queensland. Anyway, but I got it down to 12. I'm going to aim to get it colder, but I am going to commit to 11 minutes a week. But I'll probably end up doing more, let's be fair, because I've already done 5 minutes this week and I've got another one planned for tomorrow. So, but I'm really interested in the effects on dopamine and just clarity and stuff like that. While I'm doing it as an interesting experiment, I pulled myself off, which purely just because I ran out, but I thought good timing. I'm staying off all of my neurotransmitter support while I do it.
Interesting.
Because I obviously I feel like I fine-tune that space. I do really well on a certain amino acid, which anyway, but I'm just staying off that and I'm purely keeping my supplements very baseline at the moment. So just my standard B's, magnesium, fish oil. I'm not taking anything else because I want to see the impacts that this has over a period of time just on how I'm feeling, my mental alertness throughout the day, obviously my inflammation levels. And I know that's going to be a bit of a hard one to gauge because I'm doing a lot of stuff in that space at the moment. So there's going to be, from a science experiment perspective on myself, there's a few obviously other factors coming in there, but I am it's a bit of a watch this space. I'm excited to do it. I've got a little area set up, So that's my recommendation. Try something new outside of your comfort zone for your health. When I got in there the other day, I literally should have just done the hashtag, the fucking things we do for our health. But so far, so good.
I'm so excited for this. So
Yeah.
excited. And yeah, I reckon you'll smash it. Like, as
I
much as
reckon
you
I
hate the
will.
cold, you'll easily be doing
I was
over
actually
11
fine
minutes.
once I was in there. Yeah, I didn't love it, but I'm okay with it. And I feel like, yeah,
Mm.
if it's but it's just like anything the first few times you do it. Like, I know the first few times I did intense breath work. The first time I did it, I was terrified. Like, I was just like, what the fuck's going to happen here? Blah, blah, blah. But now that I've done it a few times, the experiences are so different and varying. I absolutely love it. And I recommend anyone who hasn't done an intense breath work class, like that proper Wim Hof, where you actually, like, you know, really fuck with your carbon dioxide levels and stuff like that. I recommend it, like, wholeheartedly. Like, I feel like it's for health and just things like that. Some of the stuff that I've gained from breath work has been, can't even talk enough about it. But
wow.
Yeah, so I feel like it's just another one of those things.
I'm very curious to see how you feel after some time to report back as far as the nervous system, because a lot of the feedback I've heard has been mainly like, I guess as far as the more obvious stuff, like, obviously you don't feel inflammation markers going down, but people noticing, like, I'm definitely feeling less anxious, I'm feeling less stress, like, just the way it's affecting their nervous system tends to be one of the kind of main point of views that people tend to pick up on.
Yeah, cool. Well, I'm excited for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm excited for the clarity throughout the day, because I feel like I can be such a space cadet with things. Hence why I feel like I have a very specific supplement routine and stuff like that to keep me honed in. Like, I either hyper focus or I'm fucking off with the berries doing 20 things, but none of them well. 20 things and none of them well. So yeah, but anyway, so that's my recommendation.
I love
if
it.
it's not an ice bath, try something else.
Hey, just lastly, speaking of trying something else and something new, literally as of this morning. So yes, tomorrow here in Warburton it's called Trail Fest. It's this, like, happens every year, massive big trail running event. And we were crewing, I'm going to say, lightly, a friend of ours who was doing the main 50K run. Anyway, it's going to be very hot tomorrow, and there's been talk all week whether they'll cancel it or not. So literally this morning when I was on the way to the gym, I got a text message from him saying the 50K has been cancelled and they've, like, turned it into this hybrid version. But he said, look, he's like, I'm thinking about doing the 27K. Are you going to do it, Jess? Because I've been like, no, I'll consider it. But no, because, like, I want to crew our friend and do that. And he was like, what do you reckon? And it was a group text, so everyone was, like, on me. They're like, do it. And I'm like, I was, like, ready to go for a run this morning. So I just was in the gym going, oh, what do I do? Because I'm not going to go for a run if it's going to happen. And then I just thought, stuff it. Like, I'm never going to be proper ready. So it's a 27K to the Redwood Forest, which I want to take you to still one day. It's tomorrow morning. And I said, as soon as I said yes, Damien sends me through my registration. He's gone and booked me in. So tomorrow morning, like, I'm running my first, like, actual event, which I'm excited and nervous about.
Trail running events I haven't done one for a couple of years, but trail running events, I haven't done 27K, so that's amazing. Well done. The most I've done is I think 16 or 17. So they're so fun.
So much fun.
And you'll be fine. You'll just get caught up in, like, everyone else doing it, and you've trained so hard. You're already doing, like, 23 or 25Ks, aren't you? Like, you're already up.
Yep. I think I'll be good. I think it's just my own ego to a point I've got to get over. Like, I don't expect to go out and win something like that, but I also I have higher expectations for myself as far as how I want to perform. Like, as far as, I'm like, you know me, I'm like, it's just like, I want to do well. So I want to go out there and be proud of what I do. So I'm really excited. And it'll be good. Good to pop the cherry as such and finally do it. So I'm excited. Watch this space.
I'm so excited for you. Oh my God. You have to send me some videos so I can just live through you. Yeah, I feel like I'm opposite to you. Like I'm not super like, or I don't know, I'm not competitive. I just, if I enroll and fucking complete something, I'm just happy. Like I don't give a fuck about winning. Fuck about a lot of things. I'm just happy if I get something done and I enjoy the process. But my sister's very competitive with stuff. Like, she likes to, personal best. And I've got a lot of friends that are like that with those sorts of things as well. So I feel like, the pressure that you can put on yourself is a lot. But you'll be great. You'll smash it. It'll, be so good.
Be good. Yes. I'll get lots of video and stuff to share for sure.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. I'm so excited to hear that.
All right, guys, thank you so much for joining. If you could share the show, just take a moment to do so. That would be amazing. It helps others find us. Even leave us a review would be fantastic. But otherwise, we thank you as always for joining us, and we'll catch you again next time.
Bye.
Bye.